Let's begin talking about the basilisk. Why do some creatures interest us so much? What does the basilisk stand for, and how has it stayed important in stories over many years?
The basilisk looks like a big snake or a mix of a rooster and a snake. It represents strong, deadly power. It can kill with its eyes or breath. Maybe the basilisk shows our old fear of dangers we can't control.
That's a good point, Guy. The basilisk might also stand for the unknown and our fear of it. People long ago gave these traits to creatures they didn't understand, almost making them like gods. It's a way to explain things we don't get, right?
Yes, Ryan. And there are different versions of the basilisk, like the European Catris, which have other stories but similar ideas. These stories aren't just about danger. They might show problems in society. The basilisk could be like a huge problem in life that feels impossible to beat. It's amazing how these myths can show us our fears.
The different ideas you're talking about shows that myths are not just tales, they are part of who we are. Is this why the basilisk story, like many others, lasts so long? How do these stories change how we see the real world?
The basilisk is a great example of ideas like power, fear, and trying to understand the world. In the past, these creatures taught us important lessons about real dangers. Our job now is to see how these lessons fit into today's world.
Exactly, Guy. Today, with all our science and technology, stories like the basilisk teach us to stay open-minded. They show how stories help explain big ideas in simple ways. Maybe this is why myths last so long.
When we look at myths this way, the basilisk is more than just a scary creature. It makes us think and learn about ourselves. It makes us face our fears and see the power in our stories. Let's keep looking for more insights in these stories.
Great thoughts from everyone. Let's remember these ideas as we learn more about the basilisk. What other parts of this story will teach us something new? We're looking at how the idea of the basilisk has changed through time and different cultures. How has its image changed? Are there meanings that have stayed the same or become unique?
In history, the basilisk has been shown as both a snake and a rooster-like creature, especially in European medieval writings. Its scary look became a sign of great power. In ancient Rome, it even stood for absolute authority, like the emperor. The story changed around leaders and power dynamics.
It's interesting that the story lasted in the Middle Ages. The basilisk became part of moral stories. Priests and storytellers used it to warn against bad behavior or too much ambition. It shows how myths are made by and change with the morals of their time.
Yes, Ryan. In places like Poland and Israel, the basilisk was part of local fears and mystical beliefs. It connected with the land and religious symbols. These creatures often protected sacred places or warned against harming them. Each culture changed it for their needs, adding new meanings to the myth.
So, the basilisk both scares and teaches. It allows each culture to express their worries. Do myths change like living things, growing with us?
Yes, Michelle. Myths can change like a chameleon. They last by fitting into the way different times see the world. This ability to change is why they remain important. They still make people feel and think the same way they did long ago.
Myths like the basilisk show us that even though societies change, human nature doesn't change much. We still deal with the same fears and questions about power and danger. By reimagining these myths, we find new ways to handle our uncertainties, even today.
And by seeing ourselves in these myths, we mix ancient wisdom with modern insight. New generations find meaning in these stories. The basilisk makes us think, change, and learn from the story itself.
These insights show that myths stay alive by reflecting human life over time. Let's see how these stories can inspire us today. Let's keep exploring and look at the basilisk in books and modern ideas. How do writers use this creature to show bigger themes? Are there new stories with a different view of the basilisk?
In the past, books showed the basilisk as a symbol of danger. Writers like Shakespeare use it to show beauty that can kill or as a warning about power and fear. Today, we see it in stories like J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter showing hidden dangers in safe places like schools.
Great point, Guy. In recent media, the basilisk is often changed to make us think. Movies and video games use it to talk about powerful mythical beings. It shows our interest in good and evil. The Basilisk tests hearers, will they be scared or strong inside?
Yes, and some modern writers use the Basilisk to talk about big problems today. It might stand for environmental harm or inject technology problems too big to handle alone. These stories show basilisks as monsters we create, making us think about our choices.
These stories showed that myths like the basilisk last because they stay useful. They help us think about now by looking at the past. How do these stories warn or teach us about power, danger, and change?
They show us that knowing and understanding are our best defenses. In stories, old and new, the basilisk is beaten by knowing it well. This shows the power of knowledge over fear. It makes us look deeper for wisdom in myths and real life.
Absolutely, Guy. This creature and metaphor show we need to balance knowledge with understanding. As these stories change, they make us face fear with often care, not let mystery scare us. Maybe that's why we keep coming back. These myths teach us how to handle the unknown.
By looking at these myths, young people can learn unique things. The basilisk story changes as we face life's challenges. It's not just about beating monsters, it's about changing ourselves. Each new version is a chance to learn and grow.
Thank you for these great ideas. The basilisk myth shows how it can change and still be strong. As we explore more, let's think about how these old stories can help us today. What new lessons will we find as we look deeper? Let's start with the interesting part, the science behind the myth. How did the basilisk legend affect science, and did any of it influence real science?
In history, the basilisk made people curious about reptiles. Stories of its deadly look made early scientists study snakes and their poison. This led to new knowledge about reptiles. It's surprising how stories can lead to real science.
It's more than that, Guy. The basilisk shows a deeper search to understand the unknown. In medieval times, trying to explain myths also helped create scientific methods. Separating truth from stories became an important test that helped science grow.
Yes, Ryan. The basilisk story is like how we observe in modern science. It makes us wonder how we see the world. The deadly look in legends is similar to the careful look in today's science. Science often sees what we don't notice at first.
It's amazing how the basilisk starts such scientific discussions. Did these early ideas lead to mistakes in understanding reptiles, or were they mostly helpful?
There were mistakes. People feared snakes too much. Some thought any snake was a basilisk-like danger. This fear was not needed. But from this, we learned. The need to tell truth from stories led to better studies.
True, Guy. These challenges are part of learning in science history. They remind us how important it is to question things. Proving the basilisk was just a story showed how key critical thinking is in science.
Such questioning is important beyond science. It's a big life lesson, facing fear with smart thinking. By looking into basilisk myths, people learn to break down fear and wonder. It shows how people really want to find the truth.
These smart ideas remind us how myths like the basilisk affect our search for knowledge. As we keep looking into these themes, let's think about what truths are still hidden. How can old stories bring new scientific and philosophical ideas? After seeing how the basilisk myth mixes with science, let's look at its deeper meaning and psychological roles. What does the basilisk mean in our minds, and how do these meanings affect modern psychology and literature?
The basilisk is a strong symbol of fears we usually ignore. Its deadly look might show the inner fear of looking into our minds and facing truths we'd rather not see. It's like a mirror of our inner fights.
I agree, Guy. In psychological terms, it might be our shadow self, the parts we hide from others and from ourselves. Facing the basilisk is like facing these hidden parts and trying to grow personally.
Exactly, Ryan. The basilisk's different shapes as a snake or a cicada show changing fears. It reminds us that fears change, making us adapt and grow. Each time we meet the basilisk, it's a chance to win against problems.
These ideas give deep insights into our minds. Are these themes shown in literature and modern entertainment, showing how the basilisk inspires stories about human strength?
Yes, Michelle. Stories use the basilisk to show overcoming fears and knowing oneself. Writers often show it as a big challenge, pushing heroes to face and beat great pressures, which is like psychological growth.
In modern psychology, stories with basilisks push us to bring together different parts of ourselves. When we watch or read these big battles against mythical beasts, we can see our own fights for self-acceptance and unity.
New works change the story. Instead of fear, they show a basilisk as part of nature or a friend, suggesting the idea of accepting and working together instead of fighting. This change offers a new way to handle fears through working together and understanding.
It's interesting to see how a myth like the basilisk can change and still matter to different generations. It leads us through personal and societal changes. What final thoughts can we share as we end our discussion? As we finish talking about the myth of the basilisk, let's think about what we've learned. How do these myths still shape our stories today?
The basilisk shows us our fears and how we try to understand the world. It reminds us how myths teach us about being strong.
Yes, Guy. When we study these myths, we learn about the past and find truths for today. It's about facing our own basilisks with courage.
Many new stories show the basilisk as a part of us to understand. This helps us grow through working together, not fighting.
Talking about these myths like the basilisk means more than stories. They are talks with our past and future. What questions will they still ask us?
By looking at these myths again and again, we find new ideas, keeping the talk fresh. It shows our ongoing search for meaning.
In this search, we learn from past mistakes and successes to gain deeper insights. The basilisk becomes a guide for new challenges.
So, as we move on, keep these lessons close, always question, explore, and mix the dark with the light in our stories and lives.
Thank you for all your great ideas and energy. Let's take the basilisk's inspiration with us and always find new paths and lessons from these myths.